Hi there, this is John Sale, and I'm going to be doing my presentation for the disability rights movement in the U.S. My presentation is on the Supreme Court case Buck versus Bell. I want to start by giving you the facts of the case. In 1924, the Virginia legislature enacted a law called the Eugenical Sterilization Act, and this allowed for forced sterilizations for specific people groups. These people groups included hereditary forms, that's really important, of insanity, those who had idiocy, imbecility, feeble-mindedness, and epilepsy. Now, it's important to know that this had to be hereditarily shown, that it had to happen over multiple generations of the person who was going to be considered for forced sterilization. A hospital superintendent would have to present a case against a person who had been institutionalized to be sterilized to a hospital board. After a 30-day waiting period, the person could be then sterilized. There was an appeals process that was allowed, but it was rarely considered whenever this, in the 1920s when this was happening. This law, from what I've been reading in different research areas, amounts to an attempt by the white Anglo-Saxon elites in Virginia to maintain their traditional Southern identity through scientific processes. They were trying to make their movement much more well thought of by using science to back themselves up. There was a lot of science at the time, and perhaps pseudoscience, that said that any form of developmental delay or mental illness was hereditary and would be passed down from generation to generation. Just to give you a little bit of background about what else was going on in Virginia at the time, on the same day that this law was passed, a law was also passed banning interracial marriage in Virginia, which got a lot more attention than the Eugenical Sterilization Act. This law was particularly bad for mountain white folks who would be rounded up by sheriffs and institutionalized without release until they were sterilized. So they wouldn't let them go unless they agreed to sterilization. So the first person that was picked to be sterilized was Carrie Buck, and that's where Buck comes from in Buck versus Bell. She had a child but wasn't married, and officials ruled that her and her mother were both feeble-minded and sexually promiscuous, and that was their reason for the forced sterilization. Let me read to you what Walter Priddy, who is the doctor from this case, said. These people belong to the shiftless, ignorant, and worthless class of antisocial whites in the South. You can kind of see there the social aspect coming in again. Buck's baby was deemed to be feeble-minded at 6 months after she was examined as well. And she was declared below average and not quite normal. So a legal challenge was established for Carrie Buck, and her challenge went all the way to the Supreme Court. In the Supreme Court, it was an 8-1 decision against Buck. And let me read to you what the Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote in his opinion. It is better for all the world if, instead of waiting to execute degenerate offspring for crimes or to let them starve for their imbecility, society can prevent those who are manifestly unfit from continuing their kind. 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. After the fact, in this case, Carrie Buck's child was found to not be feeble-minded at all. She was a B student and had an A in deportment and was on the honor roll, so she was not feeble-minded at all. Additionally, exploration after the case shows that Buck's pregnancy was because of a rape at the hands of a foster parent. So, to this day, sterilization laws for people who are feeble-minded, who we'd now call developmentally delayed, it's still on the books. This case has never been overturned. In Skinner versus Oklahoma, they removed sterilization for criminal offenses, but not for the developmentally delayed or mentally, those who suffer from mental illness or anything such as that. That's my presentation. Hope you've enjoyed it.